Hello and a very warm welcome to Bharata First. You're watching Frank Talk. I'm Frank Rausam Pereira. Since you're here, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share the video as well so that more people get to know about Bharata First. Do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs several quizzes. You can participate in them and improve your knowledge. If you like our content, please contribute to keep it alive. A small contribution that you make will be a giant step for us to continue bringing this content to you. Also, don't forget that all this information is in the description of this video, so please go through the description. Now, on to the program. India has lost several of its prized possessions during the time of British rule. We've tried really hard to bring back what rightfully belongs to us, but have not been fully successful over the years. The India Pride Project, a volunteer effort, has been working tirelessly, though, to return to India archaeological artifacts taken out during the colonial period. And thanks to the India Pride Project, several things have changed with regards to this particular cause. They have been successful in garnering political consensus for the project and have been instrumental in bringing back history to its geography. It's a pleasure to welcome on Frank Talk Anurag Saxena, who is the founder of India Pride Project. What is India Pride Project? It is a volunteer effort to return to India archaeological artifacts taken out during the colonial period, and what a fine and wonderful job he and his project have done. Really in bringing back some of these artifacts, not just bringing them back, identifying them, pursuing them, and finally bringing them back. Anurag, welcome. It's really a pleasure to have you here. How or what made you take up this cause? What is it? You know, everyone looks for that spark. When did that spark light inside you, and why did you think of pursuing or taking on this cause?
You see, Frank, when I first of all, it's a pleasure to be on your show. And as we were talking just before this, it's fascinating. I loved your format for the longest time. So thank you for having me on your show first. You see, I first left India in 1998 when I moved to the US. And it is inescapable. You don't even have to move. Even if you travel to Europe and US and Canada or wherever, you can't help but notice how people take pride in their heritage and how much care they take of their heritage, and then compare it, unfortunately, to India, where we take our heritage and our culture for granted. So I think the seeds of India Pride Project, in some sense, not of India Pride Project, but the Affront, was laid way back in 1998 itself. Except that, I couldn't really do much about it, got busy with life and this and that. Much later, I came across researchers who were putting in a lot of their time and effort in identifying objects, where they were stolen from, what documentation do we have about them, where are they now, etc., etc. They were doing, they built a lot of expertise, they were doing a lot of work, but not much of this work was translating into results. So that's when we said, let's start India Pride Project, which focuses on three things at the same time. One, of course, continuing the great research work that academicians and researchers are doing. But two, also focus on advocacy outside of India and build the case, as my friend Ananta Shankar Jayan says, that history belongs to its geography. So we said, look, we need to add a layer of advocacy, because without that, you're just whining on Twitter and Facebook and nothing is really ever happening. And third, we said, look, let's start building awareness within India. So we have enough stakeholders raising voice and saying, hey, this is something which is important for us as a civilization. You can't take symbols of our civilization, loot them away, either during colonial era or later, and expect us to be fine with it. it just makes us look really weak. So that's how India Pride project really came about 7-8 years back.
I was, since we are here, let me just, I really love this line, in The Diplomat. And this was something that I was reading earlier, and just continuing and touching on what you just spoke about, this line very clearly. So now let me read that out. It says, "You haven't really decolonized a nation unless you've given back what's theirs." And it's so apt. It all belongs to us, and it should be here with us and nowhere else.
So Frank ji, look, I tell you, I've had this conversation so many. I'm going to give you two examples, right? You see, the British, what did they take from us other than softer emotional aspects of inflicting pain on us, right? They took our lives, they took our resources, and they took our heritage. Now, jo jaane gayi, I mean, there's no count of how many lives were taken, right? Or how much resources were taken. The one thing that is left that they can actually return is our heritage. And I'm shocked that, they're proud of what their grandfather stole from mine, right? This conversation, this lens, this lack of morality needs to change. It really needs to change, right? And we as a nation need to say, what the heck is going on, right? Many years back, I had written an article which was very provocatively published on the Queen's birthday, right? And the article was called "Dear Queen, Thou Shalt Not Steal," right? Referring to the 10 Commandments, saying that, look, if you sitting on the throne has come because of if it is divinely ordained through the Archbishop of Canterbury and so on and so forth, that's where the Queen derives her legitimacy from. You are supposed to be a representative of the divine, and you're not willing to follow his 10 commandments. I mean, how unchristian is that of the Queen to say that she's fine with sitting on stolen loot, and I think sadly, that's a conversation nobody has tried to have, either from the India side or from the UK side in the past. And that's starting only now in the last few years. So I'm very happy that it is finally happening. But
what's brought about that change, Anurag? I mean, is there anything in particular that has brought about that change? And also, how open, are the Britishers to sit and listen to this?
So I'll answer the second question first. The Brits are not open to listening to this, right? However, very soon they will not have an option, because, as I've said so many times before, as India becomes economically a stronger nation, see, as of 2019, we are already a bigger economy than the UK, right? If you have wealth, power follows, right? So just because they want to run away from a conversation right now, just because they're avoidant, doesn't mean that they were able to get away with it, right? If you talk to any psychiatrist, they will tell you that the specific challenge with grandiose narcissism, or people that display that characteristic, where they say it is okay that I oppress you. They're recognizing that they're oppressing you, but they're fine with the fact that they're oppressing you. Unless a power equation changes, you cannot have a conversation. And that's just a reality. So left to them, they would not want to have a conversation with us. What has changed? I think there are 2-3 factors. One is India. You see, India was ravaged and plundered and colonized for many centuries. Middle East se aa gaya koi, or Europe se aa gaya, and so on and so forth. And when you're oppressed like that for so long, you're likely to suffer from some kind of trauma, some kind of collective PTSD, as I call it, right? It's only now, where a couple of generations post-independence have grown up, that Indians have started finding a level of self-confidence that we never had in the past. So I think that's one mega factor, right?
But I think this resilience, Anurag, sorry to interrupt, but this resilience has always been there, because I just like to compare this to what happened in Latin America, so to speak. Look at what's happened to the Incas and the Mayans. They've completely decimated, nowhere to be seen, no trace left of them other than in museums. Whereas our way of life, the Bharatiyata in us, continues to exist even today. People like you and me continue to talk about these issues. So many others too, who continue to talk about these causes. But despite all those years, they haven't been able to break our spirit.
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, so it's a bit of a yin and yang here, right? On one end, I think India is the only country that either from a faith or a value system or a behavioral perspective has not adopted the oppressor's faith, value system, etc., etc. So I think there is an internal flexibility and dynamism in our Indic faiths or Indic belief systems that allows that, right? At the same time, boss, it is a reality that we are very smitten by the Gora fellow.
That's
right.
True.
हमको सूट पहनना अच्छा लगता है, हमको पिज्जा खाना अच्छा लगता है. I mean, there's not too much of thought that goes behind that, right? Very recently, I was having this conversation on another show where they said, if we wear a suit, it was assumed that we will wear a suit when we are in the US and UK, right? But if a Gora person comes to India and wears a kurta, we all get excited. कि अरे वाह कुर्ता पहन लिया. अरे बस क्यों? You are being nice to them by adopting their dress code. Let them be nice to you by adopting our dress code. What's the big deal in it, right? But I think the second mega trend that has happened, and you see, Modi ji is representative of a self-assured, self-confident India, right? This emergence out of PTSD that I'm talking of. You see, one thing is not suffering the shackles of the past. The other thing is going to the world with confidence. One is the lack of fear. The other is the presence of confidence, right? I think we've overcome the stage from lack of fear into the presence of confidence. In the way India engages with the world, right? 2 days back, and I got a lot of brickbats for it, India decided to reciprocate the UK policy on vaccinations, on vaccine acceptability, right? It was absolutely the right thing to do. That's exactly how we should operate, right? But a lot of people have been shying away there, saying no. Our people only who come back to India will get stuck for Diwali, this, that. So all that has been happening, right? But you see, India's participation or not in the RCEP as an example, right? India's enforcements of digital rights of citizens, right? I mean, all these are world-class efforts where India is saying, we will go and do things that the so-called developed world doesn't do anymore. So, I hate the developing world nomenclature. I speak of the world in terms of ascending and descending, right? The minute you frame it as ascending and descending, you understand why India is willing to do a bunch of things that seems alien to the UK and the US today. उनको स्ट्राइक ही नहीं करता कि यार हमारा वैक्सीन पासपोर्ट जो है डिजिटल हो सकता है. For us, the most distant villager has a digital certificate for his vaccine, right? And I know I'm shifting to vaccines, but going back to your question, I think what's happening is India's coming out of why is this happening now? India's coming out of PTSD, right? Before the internet, before prosperity, like my father could have never run this project. And not for any of his inadequacies, right? For example, I don't know what your father did. He could not be doing what you're doing today, as an example, right?
Absolutely not. My father was a banker, so in a government bank, and
absolutely,
he wouldn't have been able to do this. No way at all.
Yeah. So we are finding our voice as Indians, and that voice is now being represented by a government and by a leader. And this is not a political statement, right? This is a statement on how a statesman or a leader that represents you conducts himself, right? 10 years back, if our prime minister was waiting in a line to shake hands with the prime minister of another country or the head of state of another country, right? That's not a relationship of equals. Why? Because you're waiting in line to shake hands with somebody else, right? That doesn't happen today, right? So I think, there is a new India emerging because people have found their self-confidence, and that self-confidence is being represented by a prime minister that reflects that level of confidence. So therefore, a lot of things, and I know there are a lot of activists who like to take credit for this. It's okay; they are driven by accolades, they are driven by their need for attention, which is fine. But I can tell you that a lot of these things could not have happened unless the political leadership took a few decisions that it did. And I think that's where the credit lies, not just for the work of bringing our gods home, but for many efforts that India is now engaged with.
Absolutely. And especially as far as this particular cause is concerned, bringing the artifacts back home, bringing our prized possessions back to India. It's not just the treasury benches who need to get credit for this, isn't it? I mean, even the folks from across the aisle somehow seem to be going with the flow. And for a change, India seems to be speaking in one voice.
It's interesting that you say that. Now, if I tell you how that happened, I'd have to kill you, unfortunately. But jokes apart, I am very glad. You see, we live in an era of polarization. We live in an era of othering, right? That if you are on the other side of the political spectrum, you and I have to be at each other's throats, right? But
there's no middle ground.
Sorry?
There's no middle ground.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's not how governments work. That's how, you see, if I'm aggressive towards you, if I'm giving you galis, if I'm calling you incompetent, that's how I would get Twitter followers, and that's how I would get invited to conferences and this and that. But sarkar mein waise kaam nahi hota. That's not how the government works, right? The government works, and I'm delighted and I feel very blessed that whether it's parliamentarians from the BJP or the Congress or the Telugu Desam or the AIDMK, everybody has raised and given their voice supporting the fact that, hey, where are our artifacts? When are they coming back? And I'm very glad that it has gained acceptance across the political spectrum, because that is where real sustainable change comes from, right? Wahan pe, that is like, as we say in Hindi, wo Bhagwan ki lathi hai. Wahan pe awaaz nahi hoti, but uska asar padta hai. You don't hear it, you don't see it, there's no chest thumping, there's no false bravado. But that makes sure that work actually happens. So I'm very glad that, I'm very thankful that parties and parliamentarians across both ends of the political spectrum see that what we are doing it for the nation, right? And it is important for us as a nation, for the faith of the people to get re-established, and for India to re-emerge geopolitically. It is very important to throw their weight behind a cause like this. It is truly for India's pride that we are doing it.
Looking at the political climate as it exists at the moment, and you yourself brought up polarization and you spoke about it, and that's how things are today. Are you surprised at all at how politicians across political parties are looking at this cause and this issue?
You see, at one level, I'm surprised, but another level, I'm not. Right? There are so many issues where one is not surprised why politicians don't support those issues. Right? I don't think I'm being very blunt here. People hate me for being very straight, but I don't think the Indic side has figured out how lobbying works or how advocacy works. Right? So much so that if somebody shows them how lobbying or advocacy works, they go and give that fellow galis. Right? I know of so many people who like just victimhood and whining so much that at some level I wonder if they really want their cause to succeed or not. Right? Because so anyways, I am not surprised that politicians across the aisle understand it, because it is inevitable, boss. Right? You see the narrative in the world changing on this particular issue, on the fact that heritage should come back home, right? You see a prime minister that has decided that this is something that needs to be done, right? It's only a matter of time where people either, the early adopters fell in line for ideological reasons because they really believed in it, because we didn't go and give them galis, because we didn't polarize them, we didn't start a fight with them, right? Now people are understanding here, this is a reality which is irreversible, so we might as well throw our weight behind it. Right? Resist karke kya fayda? Because there is enough acceptance already. And now one man or one woman or one party saying that we don't accept this new reality is going to be irrelevant. So yeah, at one level I'm surprised, but given the amount of thought our team put in getting political support, I'm not surprised that it has actually happened. I mean, if anything, I would hope that other Indic causes also find ways to get the kind of support that we did.
Maybe a private conversation is due to find out how you went about doing what you did, and so that we too, others can learn the secrets and probably take things in the right way.
It's not a secret at all, boss. Right? I'm saying it publicly. Stop chasing followers on Twitter. Stop chasing your ego. Stop chasing mini ambitions to have a genuine mega ambition. All the actions will follow the minute you know what you're shooting for. Right? Most importantly, avoid the need to win an argument. I say this to everybody in my team. I've said this on stage as well. We need to stop winning arguments and start winning battles. Unfortunately, there's so much energy that goes in winning arguments that it's not funny, right? And that's fine. I mean, it works for some people. It gives them some kind of a kick, and that's okay, right?
And it drives them too. Some people are driven that way.
And there is a need for that, right? I'm not saying that there is no need for that. There is a point. There is a tactical need for people calling out the lies and the manipulative behavior and the misinformation campaign that others run. There is a need for people to articulate their point of view. There is a need for all of that. But all of us don't need to be doing it all the time, right? Some people need to focus on that. If the Indic side was an enterprise or a company, there would be a marketing department, but there would also be a finance department. There would also be an operations department. There would also be a research department, right? And so on and so forth, right? So I think we need to understand that we need to work at it from a Sangathan point of view, from an organization point of view, right? Like we would run a company, we need to run ourselves and say that, okay, beyond marketing, beyond arguments and so on and so forth, operations kaun kar raha hai, right? And I think finance kaun kar raha hai, fundraising kaun kar raha hai, right? Those questions seem to get lost because people are just too busy on their phones winning arguments on WhatsApp and Facebook and wherever it is. But that's fine, it works for them. But at some point, I hope we evolve and mature beyond the need to win arguments, and think about something else. Yeah, what are we really here for?
Absolutely.
If you cannot make a change which is visible and which is measurable, right, then what's the point? Hindi mein, you see, you are an English medium guy, right? I'm a Hindi medium guy, so I'll tell you the same saying in both our languages, right? In English, they say, if a tree falls in a forest and nobody hears it, did the tree really fall? Right? In Hindi, it's a little more hate. We say कि जंगल में मोर नाचा किसने देखा? But regardless, if any activist, right, is not able to deliver something that can be seen or that can be measured, then is he really delivering anything at all? Or is she really delivering anything at all? And that's a question more and more people I see have started asking, which they were not asking 5 years, 7 years back. And I'm really delighted by that fact. 5 years, 7 years back, you could just say that, hey, I care for this cause and that's enough, right? Now people are saying, okay, many people care for this cause, but aapne kiya kya hai wo dikhao.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm very glad that shift has happened, sir.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Talking about the shift and talking about how the shift has happened in the political class, the shift has happened in the media as well, my fraternity. And that's pleasant. And I'm glad that it has happened. Just taking the Prime Minister's visit to the United States that took place a few days ago. There too, we saw, a few artifacts being brought back, and there was substantial coverage or reportage on that particular aspect as well. This was hardly ever seen, maybe a decade ago. There wasn't even a snippet that was available. What has changed and why has that change come about?
You see, a lot of change comes automatically in the way a nation projects itself, right? I think the media has now decided, see, as much as they dislike, Prime Minister Modi and say Modi is like this, he's like that, bigoted, tyrant, 101 labels they have, right? Which only shows their frustration beyond anything else. I think what has happened is, at a national level, at a national level, people have realized that you cannot ignore India, right? The business case for India has been established at a business level, at a geopolitical level, at a diplomatic level, at every level. Right? So India cannot be ignored, right? Like if you remember, even 5 years back, we used to be hyphenated with Pakistan all the time, right? That has pretty much ended, right? It's a very career limiting move for a journalist to hyphenate India, Pakistan together now because it does nothing but show his ignorance or her ignorance, right? That's what's happened at a national level. At an individual causes level or efforts level, I think people have started recognizing that India is paving the way. The conversations that I'm taking India Pride project as an example, right? The fact that a Vice Media or Washington Post or Diplomat or BBC cannot avoid us anymore is because we are making sense despite the fact that they were never interested, right? There is value in what we are saying. There is an audience for what we are saying. There is an acceptance for what we are saying. Across museums, governments, this and that, there is an adoption of our narrative, so to speak. Therefore, they cannot help but speak about us. There'll always be a few people who will malign us and this and that, which is fine, right? You see, some people who feel insecure malign you by writing negative op-eds about you, right? Some other people who feel insecure or inadequate themselves malign you by spreading rumors and gossips about you. Okay, Anurag is like this, Anurag is like that. You know, Anurag did this, you know, Anurag did that. Typically Ekta Kapoor serial behavior, right? And all that happens. But at some point, people recognize that this is a conversation that cannot be avoided. So we might as well have it. And the good thing is, I genuinely believe in the human condition, right? Where once people have a conversation with you, once you have a same conversation with them, they actually come around, boss. They actually come around, right? People keep saying, rightist media, leftist media, this and that. As far as I'm concerned, everybody has supported our project, right? So either I'm missing something or others are missing something or they're missing something. I don't know, right? But this was a conversation that wasn't even happening, a decade back. But now there is widespread media support, and I'm so happy that it is happening, right? And I hope we do enough that our conversations or our point of view. So, for example, I was very glad, for example, when Washington Post said that, that we were doing a good job, right? And I really hope that other Indic causes also are able to see this as a use case and say, okay, how do we also make our voice heard through platforms and media that others trust, right? Otherwise, you're playing an echo chamber game. Right?
Absolutely.
Which is sad. I know a lot of people take a stand saying, why should we care about them? You need to care about them because India does not live in isolation, right? You need to care about them because there are dependencies.
And the other side of the spectrum will take you more seriously. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. And that is where results come from, right? I don't think people, and you're so bang on here, I think they underestimate the value of being taken seriously by both sides.
Correct.
Right? And that is replaced by attention seeking.
Absolutely.
Right. But it takes all sorts to make the world go round. So, it's okay. We're evolving. And I am actually very glad when I see a lot of other operators within the Indic space. The kind of books that gets written, the kind of research that gets done, the kind of activism that happens now is, are things we could not have imagined, even 5 years back, forget 10 years back.
Very true.
I'm actually very, very hopeful.
Very true. Talking about being hopeful and we've spoken about 5 years back, 10 years back, we've spoken about the 70s as well. What does the future hold for Anurag Saxena and the India Pride project?
You see, when I started the India Pride project, each word was chosen with a specific meaning. I'm only going to focus on the word project, right? The word project meant that it is a finite term, that it has an end date. Otherwise, you would have called it India Pride Foundation, India Pride Society, whatever it is, right? It was called India Pride Project because we said our job is only to prove that history can return to its geography. Once we prove it, we will do enough to embed this within the government or within the mind of citizens so that they prioritize it. Right? It cannot be a volunteer run effort forever. So I'm hoping that in the medium to short frame that happens, and there are certain conversations happening around that. That is, I would hope that India Pride project outlives its utility and actually dies, because the idea of I want India Pride project, the organization to die, because I want India Pride project, the idea to get internalized within our nation, right? So it needs to, we need to move beyond we need to move beyond the organization and think about it in terms of a national institution, right? What's next for Anurag? Honestly, I don't know, right? What I do see myself doing is, you see, for example, I also have initiated this other thing called Data Reveals, where a lot of anti-India narratives that come in through media, through movies, through stories, etc. We make it a point to bust those myths using data, right? Now, I'm hoping that we can identify a team of 8-10 activists who almost look at causes the way startups see opportunity, and say that here is a bunch of people who every 3 years, 4 years, 5 years will pick up a new problem, find a smart and quick way to solve it, embed it into institutions, and move on to solving the next problem, right? I know I see myself as that. I hope we can have more and more people like that. So I'm in my mid-40s now. I have another, let's say, 25 years of productive life to go. One major cause is checked. So yeah, by the time I die, there might be 5, 6, 7 issues or problems that I've helped in a small way overcome, and that's my vision. My vision is, why can't we have an ecosystem of sort for startup activists who are picking up one cause after the other, one problem after the other, and then solving it, boom, 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 and moving on.
I see that happening because the pride is just becoming bigger, and more people seem to be joining the cause as well with every passing day. And I see this in the youth. The youth of today is suddenly so interested in wanting to know where they come from, what they are, and what all of this really means. And that is so heartening to see. Even though we are in our 40s, there are those who want to take the baton forward, and I see more of that happening. And I think it is only going to get easier with time, Anurag.
Yeah. Oh, boss, you're so right. In fact, I see that in the nature of volunteers that I work with, and I get to learn so much because I'm terrible with technology, and look, Frank, you and I are old people. Let's face it, right? I have just so many incidents. I remember 2016 May, I was having conversations with a volunteer, and I think this was before Zoom and all that came along. And I landed up and this guy was doing fabulous work. And I landed up in Delhi and met him, and I realized he was a 22-year-old guy. And I was shocked, when I was 22, all I cared about was कि यार Govinda की picture कब release हो रही है, या finding some great job that pays me great salary. That's all that I cared about. But you're so right, boss. I mean, the kids of today, the youth of today are so, the sense of identity is so strong. Their sense of pride is so strong, and they have so much clarity, which is fascinating. जो हमारे ज़माने में नहीं होता था.
Absolutely. And times are changing for the better. And
Yeah.
I strongly believe in the youth, and I know that India's future is in great hands because I interact with many of these youngsters on a daily basis. And that's what puts a smile on my face every night when I go to bed. So, Anurag, thank you so much for joining me on the program and sharing all this information with us. It has been extremely enriching for
My
me,
pleasure.
enlightening for me as well, because this is an aspect that I want to be honest about. I have not focused too much on in the past, but thanks to you, thanks to the project as well, it has made me get a little closer to in this aspect of India's history as well. And I'm going to steal your line for the future. I'm going to inform you and do that. History can come back to its geography. That's something that I'm going to use in the future as well. Thank you for giving me that line, and thank you for being here on Bharata First.
And best of luck and congratulations for starting a platform like Bharata First. Honestly, as you said just before we started, it's important. It's very important that more of our people find our own voice. And I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for having me here. Pleasure is all mine. It's a privilege.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so very much, and all the very best for everything that you are doing as well, because it's a fabulous job and a fabulous project that you have undertaken. More power to you, more power to our kind, and let us indeed make Bharata a better place.
Absolutely, sir. Amen.
Thank you. Well, before I go, once again, let me remind you to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share the video as well so that more people get to know about Bharata First. Do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs several quizzes. Do participate in them and improve your knowledge. If you like our content, please contribute to keep it alive. A small contribution that you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. Let me also take this opportunity to inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center. It's an initiative that will help each one of you in your competitive exams and transform the way you learn. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details and register today. Experience a whole new way of gaining knowledge. Hundreds are already reaping the benefits of the Knowledge Center. Don't be left behind. Don't miss out. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com and register now, as the Knowledge Center has so much to offer. All this information, along with some must-see recommendations, are in the description of the video. Please go through it. That's it from me. See you again next time.